Okay, my next guest is Christine DiBugnara. I'm excited to have her here. Reason why is Christine and I met about 10 years ago. I'll round it up. And our paths never seemed to cross until approximately 10 years ago, but we seem to be on similar paths in the fitness wellness industry. You've been in the fitness industry for over 25 years, multiple positions from personal training, group fitness instructor, leading you all the way up to executive senior leadership with several health and wellness companies out there. And, when I met you, when we were both working for the same company, I immediately fell in love for many reasons. One of the many reasons was the way you had an ability to look at things from a different perspective and a real perspective, which I appreciate, because a lot of times in our health and fitness companies, we are overly positive, and sometimes we don't face the reality of things going on. And I believe an issue with that is we live too much in positivity world, and we're not able to address and really overcome things that are happening in our life. And we recently caught up, and you told me about a health scare that you have had, and how you dealt with it. I think it was really empowered, and I wanted to share it more, because I think it really just goes to show who you are, not only as a friend, a person, but also as a leader. I think it really shows your exemplary leadership skills and how you also use them in your life. So to get started, thank you for being here.
Thank you. I would like to carry you around in my pocket when I'm feeling bad about myself and have you say those things to me. Thank you. That means a lot.
Totally mean it. You're welcome. Thank you. So I guess let's bring everybody back to that point when you had a health scare, what it was, what was going on in your life, both personally and professionally. Give us a picture.
Yeah. So it was 2.5 years ago. And I was a senior director for a boxing-based brand, and really happy in my role. I had just started the job there 6 months prior, so I was pretty new to them. And I've always been an active person. I'm a runner. I've taught fitness classes for 25 years, all the things, right? Do all the things. And I had started noticing some sensations that I couldn't quite pinpoint, but they primarily focused around my back. And I've sometimes, pull muscles, I think strain muscles in my back. It just, it is what it is. We all kind of have areas that we, kind of go, oh, it's pretty
Your
normal.
upper back?
Yeah,
Okay.
thoracic.
Okay.
And I just assumed, okay, I probably overworked it. And, being the stubborn person I am, I just kept pushing through it because that's what we do. And basically, I did. I pulled a muscle. I pushed it too hard. I actually felt the muscle pull. And from there follows, another about 3 weeks of intensity that I don't know how to describe other than it got very bad very fast. I have exercise-induced asthma. To me, shortness of breath during exercise is not unfamiliar. Looking back now and looking at like my heart rate monitor, my heart rate, my average heart rate on a run where I was running slower because I was feeling extra winded, was 170 something. It was really high. And I just didn't pay attention back then. I was just thinking I'm tired, whatever. I'm pretty used to being fatigued. Then the pain started, in which case I could only describe this pain as feeling like you're being stabbed and electrocuted at the same time. So I think it was striking some kind of nerve. Went to the ER a couple weeks later. Of course, I said I had a back muscle that I pulled because that's what I figured. They said, probably, we probably could scan you, but it's probably nothing. Gave me some steroids and pain meds and sent me on my way. And I could tell within 48 hours, it was starting to creep back up. And that led us right up into Christmas. And it was Christmas Day evening. And I was getting ready for everyone to come over. And I just couldn't. I was in so much pain. And I'm talking level 10 pain, the kind of pain I've never been in before. And I just said, I can't do this. So off to the ER I went. And they took me back, thinking I probably was like some kind of like painkiller seeker because I'd been there the week before
Right.
for, they're looking at your chart thinking she just wants pain meds. And scanned me this time. And this time it came back with, they said, you have blood clots all over your lungs. And that was all I heard after that. They don't really tell you a lot in the ER. They just tell you enough to terrify you.
Right.
They just tell you enough to say, you're getting admitted right away. We need to put you on blood thinners to make sure the clots don't go to your heart and stop your heart. And then they start asking you history questions. Do you have a family history of this? No. Are you sure? I think. Do you have cancer? No. What does that mean? And then we have to rule out cancers. Sometimes cancers can cause these. Ask all these very scary questions. And I just remember thinking, what is happening? I don't understand. I'm a healthy person. I exercise. This is in my lungs. Blood clots in your lungs, known as pulmonary embolisms. My lungs are like the strongest thing in my body.
Right.
I'm a runner. Like, what is, So what was happening, and what likely was the pain, was something called infarction. And most people know what infarction is and maybe don't realize they do. Is we've all heard of a heart attack, and a heart attack is infarction or tissue death of the heart. So I was having infarction inside my lungs. So as my pulmonologist told me, it's like having a heart attack in your lungs. And I had it in both lungs. So I have now been left with some permanent scarring in my lungs. That sort of takes us up to where we'll talk, I'm sure, about what it's like dealing with that.
Mm-hmm.
Phoning my job, not understanding what was going to happen, how long I might be in the hospital. You just don't know. There's so many question marks. My whole identity is fitness. I just didn't know what was happening. And things happened very fast after that. Symptoms of my shortness of breath, everything just sort of avalanched from there. My shortness of breath tenfold became worse. And that sort of takes me up through recovery. My job was very supportive. Luckily, it was remote. So I could do a lot, or mostly remote, I should say. So I could do a lot of things working from home, which I was very lucky. But a lot of things had to stop. I could not work out, take classes, definitely not teach classes. I worked for a boxing gym. I couldn't really punch anything because I was on blood thinners. They didn't really want me making impact with a bag. It was a very scary time, and I didn't really know what was going to happen. And for all I know, that it could take 1 to 2 years to recover. And that started the journey. And that kind of takes you up through
Right.
initial diagnosis and the last 2.5 years,
Yeah.
which is weird to say. It
Yeah.
feels like it's been 5 years, 10
Longer.
years, 20, but it's really only been a couple years.
I mean, I could only the one thing that I hear you say is like it's your whole identity. I am well, I am fit, like I manage, like I lead fitness in the world, and I inspire people to fitness, like it's part of your identity, teaching,
Yeah.
being around in the clubs, being with other trainers. So I know you were working remote, but when you have, because I've dealt with this, to be transparent, where I have not been in the healthiest place, and I've been on stage. And what I mean on stage is when you are leading a team and you're in and out of different facilities, you're looked upon.
Yep.
And it's sometimes expected to maintain this like healthy, vibrant, demeanor, being able to engage in activity. And when you're not well, that can be challenging, and to mask it is very challenging.
Exhausting.
Yes.
It's exhausting. And I am that person in life generally. I don't want people to see my flaws. I mean, I'm an open person. I won't hide the fact when I'm struggling necessarily, but I don't know, with people that, I'm trying to impress or lead or guide, I want to take care of them. I want them to know that I'm okay. It's very exhausting to try to hide and mask those things. When I was in my first few weeks of recovery and I'm running conference calls, I would get lightheaded and dizzy, feel like I wanted to faint because I wasn't getting air. And, I didn't want to tell them that. I'm
Right.
about to turn blue, and
Yeah.
I'm just acting like everything's fine.
Yeah.
So it's also embarrassing because you feel very weak. And if you're somebody who doesn't like to appear weak, um, yeah, it's embarrassing, shouldn't be. That's silly. Like
Hmm.
people would say, why would you be embarrassed of that? But in the moment, you really feel like something's wrong with you. And then you see everybody else going about their lives and you just don't really know. You feel like you're getting left behind. And especially as a woman in the industry who's middle aged, this industry is not as kind to those of us in their, I'm now in my late 40s. At the time, I was in my early 40s. I was 44 when I had the embolisms. But it's rough out there, and you start worrying what will people think? Um, how will they treat me in future jobs? Will they look at me different? Will they not want me? Will they be worried I'm not going to be able to perform? It's awful, and yeah, it was a big part of the recovery process
Yeah.
actually.
So going back into, I guess, the workplace and also engaging back into your life, because I assume if you're a runner, you run
Mm-hmm.
every day. It's part of like who you are.
It's my
It's your
therapy.
meditation. It's your
Yeah.
Yep, we've
Mm-hmm.
heard that on here many times. Um, and I've also had clients that have gotten injuries and haven't been
Mm-hmm.
able to run and how it's impacted them. And athletes, when they're not able to compete or use their body in a certain way, how it impacts them. Um, what was your process of going about moving forwards?
Yeah. Well, I think when you do work out a lot, you tend to have a different mindset towards suffering. Like, right? I mean, you're willing to work through pain.
Yeah.
Um, I was thinking, well, there's no way I'm going to just not move. So, I mean, I couldn't run. That was impossible. And at that point, I was walking 5 minutes at a time. And they said, well, you should definitely be moving around anyway. They promote movement. But I started every day. Every day, I did my 5 minute walks multiple times a day. And then it became 10 minutes, and then it became 15 minutes, and then it became 20 minutes, and then it became, but there are a lot of setbacks. During my first week, I pushed it too hard. I got on a cycling bike, tried to pedal, I mean, slowly. I think I was on it for 7 minutes. And sorry, TMI, I coughed up blood the next morning, and I was terrified because they said, if you do that, you got to go back to the ER. And I did. It was New Year's Eve, and it was, here we go. Like, what if I messed up?
Yeah.
So it was a lot of push and pull, which is also a big learning lesson I took away from this because I'm so used to push, 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 push. Maybe, fall back a little bit, but then push, push, push. It didn't work like that. My body was like, you don't get to call the shots this time. I'm calling all the shots. And so what I've come to learn out of all this 2.5
Mhm.
years later, it didn't feel like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It felt like 1 step forward, 2 steps back. Every day I felt like I was sliding down the hill. And I've learned now, setbacks are to be expected, but they are not the big picture.
Mm.
It has taken me 2 years to finally feel like a glimpse of my old self has emerged. I thought I was going to be swinging for the fences by 6 months because, you meet people who have much easier recoveries, and then you meet people who have really, really hard ones,
Yeah.
much harder than mine. You think you're going to beat the odds because I was fit, no, that's not how it works. So it's a big lesson that life sets the schedule. You do your best to help it along, but truly, I was not in control. And that was the hardest thing to do, was let go of the control
Mm.
and stay active and motivated to keep going forward, even on the days that clearly were not working for me and felt like they were working against me.
What was your outlook, because it sounds similar, like you started for 5 minutes into 10 minutes. We've had guests on the podcast before, helping people who've never started working out to get started in their workouts. And their suggestion is start small, walk up the block, then walk around the block. So it sounds like a little bit of that approach, but was that your outlook when you started walking? Like, how did you get back into like what was your emotional like what was your approach to that? Like, how did you get
Yeah.
yourself back to walking? Because I could imagine the challenge, you know, with the lungs and you're being nervous about blood throwing up in the morning, like you were talking about, and not
Yeah.
wanting to go back to the ER. So, how did you know what to do? How did you?
For anyone who wants to get started, and for myself specifically in that moment, I didn't really know what I was doing, and that's okay. You don't have to. You don't have to have a master plan. By the way, every milestone I set for myself didn't make it. Highly disappointing, by the way.
Mhm.
Don't recommend it. Milestones are great when you're training for a marathon. You kind of need those. But if you're just training for life, life's going to set the milestone. And then you're going to look back and go, I really just did that. I was kind of maybe hoping I would do that 3 months ago, but it didn't happen then. It's
Mhm.
happening now, though. And I'm really excited about that. So it's okay to start really small. And I mean, as small as it can get. Just show up. I've told people in my classes, hey, if just standing here and doing 10% of this workout is what you need to do, I'm proud of you for just showing up today. Let's try to make it 15% next week. And of course they're going to do more than that because they've come this far, but there's a lot of, we just talked about toxic positivity in the beginning. I can't tell you how many people I've now met in my classes. We've all said, instructors say, modify, whatever. But I can't tell you how many people I've met who have said they have been disciplined for doing something different
In a class.
In a class.
Really?
I
Like drastically different? Like doing like dance in like a strength training class?
just changing the exercise because they couldn't do
modifying.
it.
It's like doing a
Modifying.
modification. Okay.
That they've been disciplined for it.
By whom?
The instructor.
Hmm.
And to which I say, and I will tell you, I'm on Facebook groups, I see this kind of chatter. And it's not until you've been kicked all the way down to the, not just the bottom of the mountain, but of like down to the abyss of the
Mhm.
ocean, you realize, hey, we all are starting from somewhere. And if you need to do something just to survive and thrive, then do it.
Right.
Obviously, I'm not talking about someone doing jump rope during a yoga class, but like,
Right.
if you can't do the exercise that we're all doing and you need to do something different, then
Absolutely.
you got to do what you got to do. And I welcome it. But I can't begin to tell you how many conversations I've had in the last 2 years from people who have been utterly ridiculed, in my point of view, because they didn't keep up. Not
That's a whole other
shameful.
story.
That's a whole other thing.
I know. We can
but
get into that.
Really sad.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid. You don't need to have a master plan. You just got to wake up and go. And you have to have a relentless spirit. Your faith, and I don't mean faith as in religion, I mean your faith in yourself has to be bigger than the desire to give up. That's all it is.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to quit. I'm going to keep trying, even if it hurts, even if it's hard, even if I'm tired, even if I'm scared. I'm just going to try.
Right.
And that's all you can do. And that's all I did every day. Every day.
How has this experience changed your perspective right now, or changed your perspective on fitness and health in general? Because it sounds like you were pushing yourself. You associated working hard,
Yeah.
with the achievement of something, or that was your workout.
Yeah.
Have you approached your health and fitness a little bit differently now because of this?
It's yeah, probably mentally different.
Okay.
So let's begin with my body has changed as a person who's just getting older, right? We can't really train how we were when we were, 25 or whatever. But physically, I cannot move as fast as I used to, but I can still do the same things now that I used to. And that's all I'm happy to do now. I'm just happy to be running again. Am I running 2 minutes a mile slower? Yes. Does that bother me? Yes. But am I just happy to be running? Oh my gosh. Mentally, it feels amazing. But I also know that I think it's 1 in 4 people, their first symptom of a pulmonary embolism is death. And when you realize how close you got to not waking up one day, it changes the priority of why I was working out. I always was working out for my body, physique. I wanted to look a certain way. And Here I sit today. I'm 20 pounds heavier than I ever was. I would love not to be, but I'm okay with this because I know I'm still a healthy person. I'm active. I'm trying my best, but at the same time, mentally, you have to just embrace what your body is allowing you to do in this moment. I know in time I might be able to do even more. I might be able to push even harder. But for today and how far I've come, this is what I'm able to do today. And I'm grateful for it. Just like I was grateful for that 5-minute walk. There's lots of people I know who had to do it on oxygen. I didn't have to do it on oxygen. So I was grateful for that 5-minute walk, oxygen free, that I was able to do in that day. And that's all you can do. And you just have to celebrate each one as a win. The fact that you get up and try is what matters. That's all that matters. The rest will come with time.
What other strategies did you use? Were there any that didn't work or those that did? Just for somebody else that might be experiencing a health setback right now and trying to navigate through.
Well, I mentioned milestones were not my friend.
Okay.
They just weren't my friend. And
Right.
I'm not that I'm opposed to milestones. I'm a very organized human being. So I like to have markers in life of how, I get things done. Check, 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 check.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was out there and throughout this process, I would say that my health anxiety went through the ceiling into the outer space stratosphere. Like I was on level 100. You become very self-aware. There's something that kind of clicks in your central nervous system. You feel every twinge in your body and you think something's wrong. What's that? Because now you don't trust your judgment.
Right.
And you don't really know. The doctors aren't really that helpful. And you're very scared. And there were times where I was like on a work call one time and all of a sudden I really thought I was going to faint. I called for my husband. I was white as a ghost. These things happen. Like, what's happening? Is the medicine not working? Like, what's happening? So when I would go out for my walks, I'd be so afraid I was going to faint or collapse or trip and fall and hit my head or, something like that. When you're on thinners is dangerous.
Yeah.
So when I would walk, I would say out loud, because no one was around me, it was just me. I'd say over and over, as many times as I needed to hear it, I would say, fear is a liar. Fear is a liar. I'm just afraid. That's all. I'm just afraid. I'm afraid of what I don't know.
You said it out loud.
I said it out loud.
Yep.
I'm sure if like a neighbor heard me walking, but fear is a liar. But it was a very like fried green tomatoes moment. But yeah, if you haven't seen that movie, that wouldn't make sense. But I think that if you have, it will. I had to say it to the universe because if I just said it inside, I wouldn't believe it.
So a mantra, in a way.
It was a
you
mantra.
used as you're navigating
And that was
through.
mine. Fear is a liar. Because it was. If I could go back now and tell that girl what was going on, I'd tell her, you're going to be fine. You're going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. You're safe. But I didn't feel safe.
Yeah.
And I was scared. And that was really what it took. You have to speak it.
Yeah. I mean, it has me thinking back to, our audience. I'm trying to get like pearls of wisdom out there to people that are already on a fitness or wellness program or on their journey or maybe thinking about just getting started and don't have the tools. And I can imagine perhaps somebody, has a health risk, like high blood pressure, some of their markers. Maybe they have a knee or hip injury, and they would love to go back to the sports that they were doing when they were younger, but they're worried about their hip or their knee or, so I can imagine somebody wanting to do something or trying to figure it out, but then having a scare, like a fear of, will my body come through for me in a way? So if you were to talk to those people, I think the mantra is a great one. Everybody's going to be walking outside, yelling in the air now. Yes, do it. What else? What other kind of advice would you give them?
Yeah. Well, assuming it's nothing medical.
Correct.
Like obviously,
Right.
if you think you have something medical, you need to advocate for yourself. Thank God I did. And that's number one. And make sure all that's good. Assuming that nothing like that is going on, then part two is then the roadblock is you, right? Let's say it's just your worries about, can I do something? And again, this goes back, and my favorite word is relentless, because that is who I strive to always be. I'm Italian. I was raised to be this way, but when you put it into practice is when it matters, right? So You just have to be relentless about, again, your will to not give up has to be stronger than your will to give in, because it is far more painful to be immobile than it is to have a sports injury. I would rather deal with the pain of my sports injury than to be immobile.
Mm.
And if you're immobilized by a sports injury, obviously, the obvious things, you rest until it gets a little bit better, but you figure out ways around it so that you can at least do something. Maybe not the thing you love. I could have run for a very long time. I still deal with injuries. All my, you treat me for them, but you figure out a way. Couldn't
You
run.
walked.
I
You couldn't
walked.
Mm-hmm.
When I couldn't walk, I did something else. I mean, you do whatever it takes. It's got to come from a place of, I just won't give up.
How do you balance? Because it seems like you're extremely relentless and driven.
Maybe too much. My husband will tell you it's a pain in the neck, but yes, go ahead.
How do you balance that with recovery and giving yourself grace? Because it seems like that seems to be a fine balance there right now.
Well, I'm not so great at the recovery part, as you know. It's why you help me with Rolfing and things like that. I'm trying to get better. Sometimes it's because I have a point to prove. Like, I can do that. I'm gonna get there. But if we're talking about that kind of recovery, you definitely have to listen to your body. I mean, your body's going to tell you, because it has its own schedule. But also, I think the hardest thing that, like, as I mentioned, with the milestones and missing all these milestones, was that it was very frustrating, and I felt like a failure when I couldn't make a milestone. Like, this is not going to happen. I think I should just give up. Those thoughts crossed my mind for sure. But what I've definitely learned, and the hardest thing I could put into practice for myself, was self-compassion. I'm good at giving compassion to other people, not good at myself. And until I could really practice self-compassion, and by that I mean saying, stop beating yourself up for things that you didn't do or that you can't do right now. It doesn't mean that can't change in the future. So what can we do to get to that next step? That next step doesn't have to be everything. And there's a story, and I don't remember where I heard it, and I hope it was, and I hope I say it correctly. The story goes, if someone puts 100 bricks in front of you in one pile and says, I need you to move this entire pile all at once to another location by yourself, could you do it? And you would say, it's impossible. I can't lift 100 bricks. But if they said, can you lift one brick 100 times to another location? You would say, I could do that. It would take time, and it might not be comfortable after a while, but I could do it. You would have more compassion for yourself to say, okay, I don't want to do that, but I'll do it. And, maybe as you go along the way, you'll get tired, or maybe you stub your toe, or you'll get hurt along the way, but you got to have some compassion for yourself and saying, but I'm still doing the things. I'm still trying to move the bricks. We all try to move 100 bricks at once. It's not going to happen. Change isn't going to happen that way. It never will, or that will last at least. So we got to go brick by brick, and that's really how change happens. And if you don't have a little self-compassion for yourself, you're going to end up just getting stuck and disappointed.
Yeah. I heard you mention you were on a Facebook group. What other resources, communities, book, anything, that you found to be supportive for you along the way?
Well, the Facebook group, surprisingly, was the most key.
Okay.
In the group, they really promote going to therapy, which I ended up having to do because my health anxiety was just through the roof. I was still dealing with a lot of physical symptoms that I didn't know how to manage without constantly fearing the worst. So that was very critical. I have my family, I have my husband, I have friends, but also this is a very long recovery, and I exhausted them in a very short amount of time. And they're human. Like, I don't fault them for that. So I couldn't continuously press on them. I had to find another way. And there's another lesson I learned through this, is that the path can be lonely. And that's because only you can do the work. And if you're lucky enough to have a support system who is there for you all the time, it's amazing. But even then, it doesn't change the outcome. The outcome has to come from you. And so for that, I had to go on these solo walks some days that were just, I would have loved to have someone with me and just to keep me company. But that just isn't the journey. The journey had to be me alone there, feeling it, thinking my thoughts all by myself, going through this. Actually, I think made me a little bit stronger in the end to get over the hurdles of being so afraid of what was going to happen, what my future might look like. And so, support system, yes, they were there. But for sure, I felt like a lone wolf through a lot of it.
When you talk about these lessons, I can't help but think about leadership as well.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to take a look before and after, do you think that this has shaped your leadership?
That's a great question. I was always a compassionate leader.
Yes, you were. And you are. Yes.
So I don't know if that so much has changed. I feel like that is, that is definitely who I still am today.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps what may have changed is I'm trying to enjoy the journey a bit more. I never have been good at enjoying a journey. I am point A to point B kind of person. When I get to a social function, all I'm thinking about is when I get to leave. Like I just don't enjoy a process.
I get it.
Okay. So perhaps that's what's going to change for me. It has changed for me is I am trying to be more reflective of things happening to me and for me rather than at me and getting discouraged and upset and just trying to think about how do I get out of this? How do I finish this rather than what am I learning from this?
Yeah.
Why is this happening?
Are there any other messages you want to share with the audience about your story?
Well, first and foremost, if you or anyone you know ever feel like something isn't right, you must advocate for yourself in all ways. It doesn't even have to be a health thing. It could be anything. But you always must advocate for yourself, speak up for yourself. It's paramount because it could be life or death in some situations. 2 is be kind to yourself. I know we hear that all the time, but if you are not kind to yourself, and I'm not great at being kind to myself, life will really throw it at you. And it's going to be so much harder to get the things you want in your life if you don't give yourself some kindness. Because to be honest, not a lot of people have a place where kindness comes to them. They have to sort of manifest it for themselves. And that's the only way to truly be happy.
What does that look like?
Gentleness, reaffirming words to yourself. And I'm not talking about like goofy, I'm not talking about silly self-positivity. I'm talking about really believing that you're worthy of the things that you want, whether they're big or small or in between, to just know that you're worthy of it and you can get there, but you can't have an unrealistic expectation on how it's going to happen. And you just have to be willing to go through it and come out the other side a different person, because you will not be the same person.
Almost like you're worthy of being healthy. You're worthy of, somebody that's struggling with, a health concern right now or
Absolutely
wanting to get well, just for them to know that, they're worthy to be well and healthy.
They are. They're not only worthy to be well and healthy, they can do anything they want. They really can. And I mean, I want to be a triathlete, but I could be versions of that.
Correct.
I may not be an Ironman, but I can be versions of that if I really put my mind to it. Not going to happen next week or the week after. But if that was my goal, was I could just swim. I could just ride a bike.
Mm-hmm.
I could just maybe go for a run. I don't have to be an ideal. That's something different. I'm just talking about finding happiness in yourself as much as possible, and not in a way that's inauthentic. I'm talking about a real just waking up and not feeling unhappy with where you are in your life for that moment.
I feel like you've shared so many great lessons and tools and, that I think a variety of people can definitely use and learn from.
Hopefully.
Yes, I know so. I always like to ask this question at the end of my podcast because I feel like I get some valuable people on here that really share some great pearls of wisdom. You've been in the fitness wellness industry for 25 years. If you were to go back or if you were to talk to somebody just getting started, looking back on your career, um, your engagement in fitness, wellness, like just the whole journey, and there was one thing that you really wanted to share, like, do this one, this is what it is, I know it's hard to share one. But if you were to look back and want to share it with somebody, what would you say to them just getting started?
Well, I would say take care of your body because time goes by really fast, and then you wake up and you realize you've run it through the ground.
Right.
Especially if you work in the fitness industry, we all laugh about it because it's true. We don't practice what we preach.
I think it's like that in a lot of industries.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, and just remember that things don't last forever. So don't put all your eggs in one basket. Diversify in every way you can. Find many things to be good at because particularly fitness, every industry evolves and you want to be able to move with it. And that's very hard to do. It's easier said than done, but you must be willing to evolve as well. And I guess that would probably be my parting words of wisdom to someone getting started. But
Yeah. Well, thank you.
thank you.
If somebody wanted to get in contact with you, I know you currently do consulting work for
Yeah.
companies and teams on projects, processes. They probably come out amazing after hearing about all your life lessons and how you approach things. How would somebody get in contact with you? And we'll
Yeah.
also put it in the show notes.
Yeah. They can go to my website.
Mhm.
It's pivotalfitnessconsulting.com. They can send me a message there. They can find me on, well, probably not the best place to find me is Instagram. I have a private account, but
Okay.
yeah, my website's usually the best way to find me.
Great. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Thank you.